Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Spendflo webinar on the journey to CFO with Konstantin, the CFO of Payhawk. Spendflo is a SaaS buying and optimization platform that helps companies optimize on their SaaS spends. I'm Nivas Ravichandran, and I head marketing for them. And so just giving a little bit of context about the Journey to CFO series before we dive into the webinar, right? This is, I think 2023, especially for finance leaders, has been a super challenging year. And I think probably if there were a list of like challenges till 2022 for a CFO, I think a whole new list of things just got added for all the finance leaders in 2023. And I was reading like a LinkedIn post which said there's no more financial like an annual plan. I think it's more become quarter and even month, where you have to be like more strategic and more just being aware of what's going on from a company standpoint. So I think this is our way of paying it forward to the community, where we bring finance leaders to talk about their best practices, insights, and also how are they staying ahead of the curve, right? I personally love Payhawk as a brand. I've seen them at a lot of events, and I've interacted with the team as well. A great team, and I think what they do is a pretty interesting thing. So we thought, who better than having Konstantin over here? So welcome, Konstantin, for the webinar.
Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot, Nivas, for the invite. Hope this is going to be very useful for everyone that is going to join or later is going to see this webinar. So everyone, just feel free to ask any type of questions. We obviously, Nivas, you have a list of questions that you want to ask me, but if something is not in those questions or you guys want to ask something else, feel free to chat. I'll try to answer all of your questions today.
Awesome. Konstantin, just for the audience, right? I know there's a large banner right on the wall for what Payhawk does, but do you just want to give us a quick insight on what Payhawk does, and then I can go in for a quick intro?
Sure. Maybe the simplest explanation would be, in order to run a successful business, you need to manage your business pretty well. And one of the main issues that gets in your way when you want to manage your business successfully and you want to be successful is, first of all, how you get access to timely and accurate information. And second of all, how you manage your spend. So Payhawk is really a solution that can help you be more efficient in your corporate spend. What we do on our platform is take care of all of the complex workflows and procedures regarding how you approve spend, how you control spend, how you monitor spend. And the way we do that is through either issuing one of our Visa cards that you can either use a plastic or you can use a virtual card, or you can upload invoices or bill payments directly on our platform. We extract all information like supplier name, VAT, any type of information that you need so that your accountants can put this in and check all the necessary prerequisites for this expense to be accounted for, and we push all this data to your accounting system. We also handle bill payments, so if you don't want to pay or some suppliers don't want to get paid with a card, we also handle bill payments through our platform, so you can simply orchestrate your accounts payment with a regular bank transfer. So that's pretty much in a nutshell. We operate in the UK, in the EU, and in the US. We're, I think, probably the only one or one of the very few companies that cover companies in those three jurisdictions.
Right. And I think one of the very interesting things, if you go into Konstantin's LinkedIn profile, right? Like obviously that's where some of our research began. You would see he was a manager of finance at this company called Progress. We're going to dig a little deeper into that. And also he's been a venture partner for some time, or like more from an investment standpoint, but I think that was also overlapping with some of the times at Payhawk. But if you very rarely do you find the title which says co-founder and CFO, right? I think Konstantin, we'd love to hear your angle on that, and I mean, how it all began.
Well, it's a very interesting story. I mean, personally, my career started in a Big Four company. So I was doing some management consulting in KPMG. went across very different industries, very different use cases. I was doing valuations, M&A, due diligence, also some audit engagements. And then at some point in my career, I got approached to join a Bulgarian tech company, which was pretty big and pretty successful at the time. I was a bit hesitant at first because I didn't know what to expect. Now looking back, this was probably one of the best decisions that I took in my life because it changed my life completely, both personally and professionally. So I initially started in Telerik as a valuation specialist. Back then, the company was doing a lot of M&A transactions, so I was really handling all the valuations related to M&A. Then I quickly became the person who is handling the budgets, the single FP&A resource. Back then, we were like a company of 800 people, very big team in the US, very big team in Bulgaria as well, also teams in the UK, in Denmark, so very diverse across like the globe. And then I was lucky enough to be also part of the team when Telerik got acquired by a US company. I was working alongside with the founders on that deal and also on, really closing out any loose ends on the financials, on the business plan, on how the business is going to perform. So it was a pretty interesting journey. I met with the three co-founders of PayHawk, with the two other co-founders of PayHawk. We are in total three co-founders back in my Telerik days. So we known each other for quite some time. And, when the idea of PayHawk was born by Christo, our CEO, I literally started, exploring the different angles, helping the company with the initial setup, even being part of the initial Google sprint. I initially joined the company as an angel investor, but then I spent so much time working on PayHawk things that at some point we just needed to formalize it, and me becoming the third co-founder and officially employed by the company, that was like a logical next step. But it's a very interesting journey. I think typically you wouldn't necessarily find a CFO as part of the founding team of a company, but I think especially in the early days and even till now, my role has been way above what a typical CFO would do, and I'm kind of not like the typical CFO. I used to handle a lot of the operations, like opening new offices, dealing with legal, dealing with compliance. So it was pretty much anything related to paper misery or any type of complex calculations, building business plans, pricing strategies, and etc. This ultimately ended up on my desk. It's very interesting because we are very diverse and very different people in terms of skill set, in terms of personalities. Christo is our CEO. He's like the big visionary, like the steam engine that really gets us going. Boyko, our second co-founder, who is the CTO, he's really the brains behind our software and what we have been building and what we have been very good at so far. And we have a very busy roadmap to expand on our software capabilities in the future as well. And me coming with a totally different mindset, focused really more on finance and operations. So it's very interesting to see how three different personalities, three different skill sets, three different even career journeys and experience come together. It's very challenging sometimes, but I think that's what really creates the magic, because you can rely on those people. You can have a different viewpoint. You can have like a very open discussion on even some financial topics. You can have an unbiased opinion by someone who is not a finance professional, or vice versa, how we scale up, how we build a product, and etc. For me, it was very easy to make this switch and really become one of the founding members, because at the end of the day, our product is really targeting finance people. So I feel really close to what we do, and I'm very passionate about our product and the customers that we serve.
Right. I'm going to pick up like one audience question because it is super relevant to what you were just speaking about. Tom asks this question saying, is it more typical for fintech startups to have a CFO co-founder versus other industries?
I think so, just because, fintech is more focused on selling to finance people. So it's very helpful to have someone with a finance expertise that can help you tailor your value prop, tailor your product, get some insights from, the finance world. I think typically people like me usually join either as CFOs or COO. I'm kind of in between those two roles, and I have been doing a lot of operational stuff since the beginning. So as I told you, I don't consider myself like the typical CFO profile.
Right. So I think we'll probably just, I think, would you be able to talk us through what 2022 and 2023 has looked like? Especially, not necessarily going into very minor details, but more like what is typically changed for you as a CFO, Konstantin?
Well, 2022 was a very different year. I think we got spoiled for the last decade or even more than a decade, where money was basically free. There were no interest rates. We would see valuations going through the roof. We would see people with just like a PowerPoint fundraising crazy amount of money just because nobody really cared on whether you can build a good business or not, whether your idea really is going to make sense in the long term and it really is going to be a profitable business or not. It was just everything, or not everything, but a lot of the investments were really based on hype. And grow the top line as much as you can. We'll figure out the business model later. We'll figure out how to make money later. And then all of this suddenly changed, probably beginning of H2 in 2022, actually late H1 2022. All of a sudden, the entire market sentiment changed. So money was no longer free. Even today, we're expecting potentially more interest rate hikes. So all of a sudden, the entire sentiment, I think, in not only fintech, but all the startup scale-up companies really changed to, hey, does your business really make sense? Growing the top line is okay, but are you efficient? Is your customer acquisition cost or your lifetime value making sense at all? And can you really build a more profitable business out of what you have? And I think a lot of companies had to change overnight the way they look at their business and how they're going to be scaling up, how they're going to be performing, what to focus on. And for some of those companies, it was, and I think it still is very hard just because the priorities really changed overnight. For us, it was actually a good thing because from day one, we had a very good idea of how we want to build our business. Even in the early days, we did probably 20 or more than 20 iterations of our business model and our pricing and our planning, just to make sure that we have very sound unit economics, or we plan to have very sound unit economics once we scale up. So even from day one, we were very focused on, let's build the best business that's really going to be super efficient and is going to be profitable in the long run.
Right. Konstantin, I think your Payhawk's case is overall an exemption, but let's say from the growth of an early stage company or like even a mid stage company, right? When do you think there are obviously like title differences in terms of calling it a head of finance or a VP of finance, and then a CFO gets appointed, right? When do you think it becomes necessary for a company to appoint a CFO or probably elevate someone within to be a CFO? And do you also have, some learnings from the past or understanding about how the board or the executive leadership appoints a CFO? What do they look for in a CFO, Konstantin?
Well, I think typically, the title doesn't matter that much. I think in the early days, usually one of the founders deals with anything related to finance. As you grow your company, things become more complex. Just to give an example, even from the very early stages of Payhawk, we had a lot of complexity just because we have a software service, but we also have like a financial service bundled in together that have very different treatment towards VAT, very different treatment towards how you're going to handle that service. We had multiple jurisdictions that we worked in. So from the very early days, it was the complexity was very high. And I think it really depends on the needs of your business. If you see the complexity going up, if you see that the business really needs someone who need to take care of the finance and really professionalize it to some extent, or to build very solid foundations, then that's the ticking point where you start looking for someone like this. In my view, in the early days, you really need someone who is a bit more operational. So someone who's not afraid of, rolling up their sleeves and, getting their hands dirty, really getting into the detail of things, really understanding well the business and how the business is going to evolve in the next, let's say, 1 or 2 years, so that this person can build a very solid foundation. And I remember, especially in the early days of Payhawk, I would spend my time on a very diverse set of activities. So I would be on the phone with one of our accountants, talking about, hey, this expense needs to be booked in a GL account, whatever, like some code, and this expense needs to be booked in another account. So on a very granular level, you get involved just because you're like a one-man army. You need to do everything by yourself. And then probably 20 or 30 minutes later, I'm talking to investors, pitching Payhawk, explaining how the future is going to look, like preparing 3-year, 4-year, 5-year forecast, explaining, how our customer acquisition model works, what's our lifetime value, how efficient we are in certain markets, and etc. So you really need to be constantly able to make this switch, like really going very granular on a very deep level, but then also switching off and working on the big picture, on the big strategy, taking on some of the strategic initiatives, talking to investors, preparing for board meetings, and etc. So in the early days, you need like someone, at least in my view, who's gonna be this one-man army who can do it all, really focus on the granular things, but also keeping an eye on the big picture and making sure that everything is sound and the company has solid foundations to scale. Then the next stage would be this person building a team. For me, it was, I very early on realized that I'm becoming a bottleneck just because my time is limited. And whatever I do, I have 24 hours per day. There's not much I can do that. I cannot change this constraint. So I had to start hiring people very fast that I can onboard, I can delegate, I can build a team around them, and I can really start focusing on the bigger picture. And it's a very interesting switch, because from some point onwards, you start to not that much spend time on daily operations, but you start delegating to other people and you start building core functions in-house. And I think it's very critical to do this early on. My personal preference and the way I build the finance team is with people that I know and that I can trust from my prior experience, people that have been working in finance for quite some time, so they don't need like hand-holding, they don't need a lot of explanations on what to do, or they don't need a lot of onboarding. I can simply, talk to them once we agree on when they're going to join. They come to the office, we have like a one-on-one, and they can start working immediately, handling some of the tasks and offloading a lot of the operational burden that I have. And it's really critical to build very different functions within the finance very early on. For me, the first function that I built was the reporting function, just because this is critical for analyzing the business. So have timely reports, report to your investors, have up-to-date numbers whenever you're fundraising, so you don't need to wait, X amount of weeks just closing the books. And then the second function was really tax and FP&A. Tax, just because we had a lot of complexities with our model. We were operating in different jurisdictions. I ended up spending my time in endless calls with tax consultants. And I was like, at some point, I really need someone who can handle this. I mean, it's not, I cannot do this like a full-time, as a full-time job. I need someone who is experienced and who can navigate and who I can trust, so that I'm not that involved in, strategizing on tax or building very complex tax structures. And the FP&A function is critical. I'm coming actually from an FP&A background, so I have very personal interest in FP&A in general. This was one of the hardest things for me to let go of, just because I really, and even today, to this day, I'm very involved in, the FP&A dynamics of the team, but a lot of the operational stuff is happening by someone else. But it was very hard for me to let go of this one because I feel very passionate about FP&A. And for me, this is probably one of the most critical functions within the finance group.
Right. I get reminded of this. There is this. I think I don't know if it's by First Round Capital or one of those guys where they talk about letting go of your Lego blocks, right? Because like in the beginning of the company, there are there's only very few people to do everything. And then you pick up almost everything. All the blocks are just yours, right? Like let's say if it's marketing or if it's finance. And but when you have new people and you know that, hey, you know what, they can build a better structure with those Lego blocks, you'll have to keep giving it away. I think if you're like in scaling companies, you should probably read that article. It's a very interesting piece called Letting Go of Your Lego Blocks. I got reminded of that. So I'm going to jump into one more of the audience questions. Tom again asks, what do you think about links between the CFO and the head of partnerships? How do CFO and BizDev collaborate? And do you think these roles could be somewhat combined, like you with CFO or a COO, or is that just a CRO?
I think so. For me, the finance profession and being a CFO is all about being a good business partner. And this is probably going to sound very surprising to a lot of people, but I spend probably 50% of my time working with people from other departments, just because I want to understand how our sales and marketing machine is working. I want to understand how our engineering department is working. And for me, this is the only way you can do your job. I think probably 10, 15 years ago, the CFO job was mostly around debits and credits and producing reports and doing audited financial statements. And this is still very relevant. It's still a very important part of the job. But where the key value add lays in for me is being a good business partner, really understanding the business, really knowing what are the drivers and what are the levers that you can pull or push, so that the business can go into one direction or into another direction. I really spend a lot of my time working with people from the leadership team in other departments, just to be able to understand and to keep up and to be involved in a lot of the sales conversation, a lot of the marketing planning, a lot of the R&D planning. Essentially, what we do as a business is we have this budget or like a forecast or whatever long-term vision where you want to go. But in order to build this, you need to really understand the drivers behind the business. And the only way to understand the drivers behind the business is to be close to that business. So whenever we are building the marketing funnel or the sales funnel, we spend a lot of times with the sales folks really understanding, hey, does this make sense? Is this assumption right? What do you see? What do you think is going to happen in the next 12 months? So the business partnering piece for me is critical. Partnerships is also one of the key areas. It really depends on your business, but we also have a partnership team here at PayHawk. And a lot of the times, for example, especially in the early days, I was involved with the guys on, hey, how are we going to approach this opportunity, how we can price it, can we make money out of this partner, how are we going to be, going to market essentially with our partnership program. So I think it's more of a collaboration. You cannot work in an isolation. You cannot work in silos anymore. You need to be really out there, talking to everyone, understanding everybody's needs, making sure that this is reflected in your business plan, in your forecast, in how you analyze the business, in how you prepare for your board meetings, or in how you talk to investors.
Right. Konstantin, because you spoke about partnering with like BizDev and things like that, right? Like I'm sure this conversation keeps coming up where I think there was also a question around competitors, right? I think today, almost every space is a very competitive market. And I think even the payment space today is getting as competitive as it can get, right? Like, I mean, there are niches, there are segments, there are regional markets and everything. I think you wear both the hats of a co-founder as well as a finance leader, but I'm going to probably take the finance leader perspective over here and ask, how do you ensure growth or probably good competition with the good challenge for the competition, but at the same time ensuring some of your basic metrics are taken care of, like especially from a sustainable growth standpoint?
Well, the short answer is not easy. Usually there's a lot of back and forth. So, but it's always very healthy discussions. You know, sales and marketing people tend to be very optimistic about the future and how they can perform, the number of deals they can close. You know, we're running this great campaign. It's going to be amazing. It's going to generate a lot of leads. It's going to be pretty good. And I think my job is, first of all, to not say no all the time, but to really get into the shoes of the other people, really understand their logic, and really get on the level where I can question their assumptions. Okay, like we're going to spend that much money on this event or on this campaign, but what are we aiming for? What is the end result of this? How is this going to impact our customer acquisition cost? Is this going to be a cost that, for example, we're doing an experiment, so we don't really expect anything out of it. We're just testing the market. And then once we see a good fit, we can deploy more money and we can forecast and we can put like more accurate assumptions on how, you know, this is going to perform in the future. So it's really a very healthy dialogue. And it's very, very good that, you know, people in the company are very open-minded and we can have these conversations. Usually when we do that, you know, there's no egos involved. Conversation is very friendly, very open. So at the end of the day, everybody enters and leaves the room, you know, open-minded.
Right. I'm going to probably take a step back and ask about, I know there are different routes to becoming a CFO, right? Like it could be the controllership route, or it could be the finance, the business finance route, or even the banking route, or things like that. What do you think one particular approach has a slight stronger edge? You said you also like the FP&A side of things. So do you think that makes, is there a particular angle which you think, hey, you know what, this has a critical edge over the other ways in which you can become a CFO?
Yeah, I am very biased on this one. For me, FP&A people make the best CFOs just because they have a different mindset. So they're not that much focused on debits and credits. They understand accounting, they understand debits and credits, but what they're really keen about, they're really passionate about is how we can make this business better. What is performing well, what is not performing well, where do we need to hit the gas on, where do we need to take a step back and reevaluate how we perform, where do we need to hire more, whether we don't need to hire more, you know, preparing different types of capacity planning models for all the different functions in a company. And I think this is for, at least for me, because I went through this journey from being an FP&A professional to becoming a CFO. And what has helped me the most is really the FP&A work, just because you spend a lot of time with different people from different departments, understanding the business, understanding the needs, and then you can easily translate everything into, you know, budgeting or planning or any type of financial analysis that is needed.
Right. So we actually have one question from Vishwa. He asks, I'm also a CFO / co-founder of a fintech startup and have to provide the right leadership to a CEO who's more of a salesperson. And so far this works. Do you come across this, and any lessons learned that you can share, please?
You mean lessons learned from the relationship between a CEO and the CFO, I guess? Yeah. Well, I typically, you know, it's very interesting because typically CEOs and CFOs usually go into bundle. So you need to build a lot of trust between those two areas. And for example, when a CEO leaves and starts another job, usually the CFO comes with that person just because they're so tightly connected to each other. I think for us, what works really, really great is keeping the conversation very open and very honest. Sometimes it means having a lot of heated discussions, but this is very healthy for the business, and even on a personal level, it's very healthy for our relationship as well. I see my role mostly as, really supporting the vision that our CEO has, and really making sure that we don't end up in any trouble, really making sure that we are, grounded, and we don't, dream of something that's not going to happen. So really being that reasonable voice in the CEO's head of, questioning to what extent his vision can be accomplished. Is this the right way to go with this vision? Really having, being the support that that person really needs so that they can execute on the big vision they have. But I think the CFO is really instrumental in that process, because not only can the CFO question and add a lot of value to that vision, but also they can see a different route, a faster, more efficient route to accomplishing the company goals. So for me, this is probably one of the most important relationships between the company, really having this strong bind between the CEO and the CFO, and really looking at one direction, doing things, really looking at one direction.
Right. And Konstantin, do you see, do you kind of in the foreseeable future, do you see how the role of a CFO, probably you've seen it as how it's changed over the last few years, and do you see how it would change in the coming years for a tech CFO or a CFO of a tech company?
Yeah, I think that all the CFO is evolving a lot, and I am engaged in a lot of topics and a lot of things that are not finance related at all. For example, we spend a lot of time looking at what solutions and what tools we can use so that we can optimize our processes. We spend a lot of time analyzing operations. So I think the CFO role would gradually evolve into more like a chief financial and operations type of a role, where you're also responsible for a lot of the operations and a lot of the tech stack that the company is going to use, just because everything in the company has a financial aspect to it. And you really need to make sure all your metrics, all your data, all your numbers are correct and accurate. You need to be this guardian of, the good hygiene of the data and the financial aspects of the data.
Right. Hey, Konstantin, so what if you were to probably provide for all the directors or the VPs of finance in this call, right? On, hey, what do you think they should probably do, like maybe 2 or 3 things just to self-equip themselves to kind of get to the higher levels? What would that be, Konstantin, from your perspective?
I think really becoming a good business partner. So spend a lot of time with people from other leadership roles, really trying to understand what drives them, what their issues are, and how you can be helpful, and how you can really be part of that leadership team and support those people rather than just focusing on the finance things. For me, this has worked out pretty well, and I think really CFOs should be sitting at the table with all the different leaders, really open-minded, really understanding their concerns. Our job is not to say always no, we cannot spend money on this, or we shouldn't do this, or we shouldn't do that. But our job is to understand why we want to do that, what is the rationale behind this. Does this make sense from a finance perspective? Is there a way to make it even more efficient, or is there a way to help these people essentially achieve their goals?
Right. And is there this is more of a question from just slightly old school method, but are there any books or resources that you generally have looked up to? It could just be around business leadership, or it could be around finance. Something that you'd want to recommend to the audience here.
Nothing strikes in particular. I mean, I think one thing that's very common is that things change so fast nowadays, and you constantly need to be in the loop of what's happening, what is going to happen. Even from a metric standpoint, how you report, what matters to your business, what is going to matter in the next, 2, 3, 5 years. For me, it was very beneficial first to understand all the different metrics behind how a SaaS business works. So this was, I don't know, probably 6-7 years ago, one of the first things that I really got very heavily involved in. So I read everything out there that I could get my hands on how do you calculate customer acquisition cost, what's the lifetime value, how this changes over time, what are the different pros and cons of the different approaches. So really, I think staying in really getting this mindset that everything is flexible and everything is going to change. So really staying on top of what the industry is going to go for next. That means reading a lot of articles, reading a lot of books. So don't just focus on one book or one article or one blog post, because things are changing so fast that what you learn today and what you read today is probably going to be relevant in 3 years.
Right. Because you spoke about things that are changing pretty fast. I think there can't be a webinar today, in at least in 2023, without talking about like either generative AI or chat GPT. I just wanted to understand, have you really seen some use cases coming in from a finance standpoint? Is your team using either chat GPT or be it something like a AI based platform for performing some functions within Payhawk, Konstantin?
We are exploring the AI angle in Payhawk a lot. I cannot share much details because I don't want to spoil any surprises that might be coming later this year or next year. But we are looking a lot and exploring a lot of how we can play with AI and really make our service even better for customers. Personally, for me, I cannot wait till, I don't know when this is going to happen, probably in the next few months or in the next year. There is a good AI tool doing any financial modeling, any analysis, any, some of the heavy lifting that we normally do when we prepare budgets or when we analyze data. I think there are good tools now to do some basic stuff, but a lot of the more advanced stuff, I'm really looking forward to seeing how this is going to play out in the future. And for me, I think this is going to be a game changer for our industry because you would really focus on being more creative and more analytical, and you can do a lot of very fast iterations on your business model when you're empowered with such solutions or such tools, just because you can create very easily from scratch different scenarios, test different assumptions, see what breaks, see what works, and then really make very fast iterations on your business model. So I'm really looking forward for this. I think this is going to be exciting.
Got it. Cool. I think we've almost come to the end, and I'm just going to launch a quick poll. This webinar was brought to you by Spendflo as well as Payhawk from a partnership standpoint. And if any of you are interested to hear more from us about either Spendflo or Payhawk or both, please just key in your options so that we'd be able to reach out accordingly. And I think Konstantin, just one question, right? Like, I mean, this is more of a, like, what do you think are maybe 2 or 3 mistakes that finance leaders should probably stay away from, right?
Let me just think this one because there's so many mistakes.
I
think the number one mistake, especially for any leader building a team, is not delegating. Sometimes it's very hard to let go of things. Making a reference back to the Lego blocks, you need to remind yourself that you have a limit. So the more you empower people around you and the more you delegate stuff to those people, the more you can accomplish as a team and as a company. And I think people tend to be sometimes reluctant to delegate and to hire people, which is not playing out very well. For me, the second you feel that you're becoming a bottleneck, you need to start thinking about, okay, I need to hire someone, I need to delegate, I need to really make sure that processes are running smooth and efficient. Then the other thing that I've come across so many times in my career, and I see it in a lot of the people even that we are hiring and that are working in my team, is really trying to overcomplicate things. For us, it was a very interesting journey with a lot of ups and downs. We changed a lot our business models, and we iterated constantly on how we're going to be, budgeting, forecasting, analyzing data, and etc. And I think one of the traps that you can easily get yourself in is overcomplicate things. So really do things that you want to put like a process in place, you want to automate things, and you want to have a pretty nice process that you can follow. And this is great, but if you haven't reached a stable state, this is going to get in your way because this is going to break everything. I mean, you cannot put a solid process or you cannot automate things until you reach a stable state. And sometimes doing things manually and doing things that don't scale work better for you than trying to automate, trying to do a formal process, or trying to do a super complex thing from the get-go. A very good example for this would be when we were changing a lot our business model, when we were doing iterations every couple of months. That was the time when I hired the first person who was going to be leading the FP&A team. And immediately when that person showed to work, he started building like super complex models, building macros, super complex formulas, and etc. And the first conversation we had is, this is not time well spent on your end because you invested so much into building this complex model that we're going to retire in, 2 months. So better build something simple, something that works, something that we can iterate on, something that we can build on. But for the time being, we haven't reached a steady state where we need to do the complex stuff. So my key takeaway that unfortunately everybody learns this the hard way is sometimes you need to build simple stuff that doesn't scale in order for you to iterate fast and to get to a steady state. And once you get to a steady state, okay, put in place like the more complex stuff, like the formal processes, and trying to automate things and etc. But until you hit that steady state, it's just going to be time wasted.
I love that. Like, I think that's a great way to probably end this webinar as well, right? Like, if you think about it, build simple stuff that won't scale, but till you attain your steady state, right? Like, I think that just means a lot in different directions. But Konstantin, I think that brings us to the end of this conversation. And thank you so much for coming forward to do this webinar with us, and Bayhawk in partnering with us for doing this webinar. I totally loved this conversation. I took a lot. I learned a lot, and I'm pretty sure the audience, we kept getting a lot of questions as well. So thank you so much once again, Konstantin.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah. Cool. So we keep doing these Journey to CFO webinars, and I look forward to seeing you in the upcoming one. Do take a look at Spendflo as well as Bayhawk. And my name is Nivas Ravichandran, and I'm happy to connect with each of you on LinkedIn if you can send me a connection request. And Konstantin is, I know it's a little tricky because I think almost everyone sells to the CFO as well today. So is there a good way where they can follow you, or just for them to keep them updated about you?
Yeah, of course. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm usually responsive there. So just ping me.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking time on a Thursday to be able to join with us. Hopefully, I'll see you on the next webinar. Thank you.